welcome everybody to Reform Gangsters live YouTube feed. If you like my content, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Also, don't forget my Patreon. Check it out. I got some really good new content. I got a new John Gotti story up there and running. So check it out. The membership started $1. Also, don't forget my merch. I have one of my hats on right now. Reform Gangster Podcast hat. Check out our merch. We got some nice stuff you may be interested in. Okay, so I have some questions that were sent in. I'm going to try to answer most of them. And then we'll take some questions from the audience. Hold on one second. Let me just get to these questions. Okay. So the first one was, which is interesting, which must be from somebody from my neighborhood. Why did Charles Cornelia kill Michael Cataldo? What was the real story behind that? That happened at the Blue Fountain Diner in the 70s. Carl Amato was there with his girlfriend. Robert Angle was there with his girlfriend at the time, and Michael was there. Charlie walked in. It was about 3 a.m. Everybody, I guess, was a little lit up on alcohol. I think Michael and Robert and Carl came from, they were at Broadcasters Inn, which was a disco up on Grand Central. And it was just an argument outside. I don't know. It was an argument outside, and Charlie took out a knife and he stabbed Michael. I mean, there was no ulterior motive, no planning. It was just a spur of the moment, crazy thing. And he stabbed him once in a bad place, and Michael died. And Charlie actually got convicted for that murder many years later. So yeah, there was no real story behind it. That's the story. It was an argument outside, and Michael got stabbed and died, unfortunately. You know, I don't think Michael instigated the argument. I think Michael just was a victim of circumstance. But that was the incident. And then there was some major sit-downs after that, because the Blue Fountain Diner actually was owned by 2 wise guys from another family. And there was some sit-downs over it, so Charlie wouldn't retaliate against Robert and Carl. So Fat Andy, my father, and Tony Lee sat down with these wise guys that owned the Blue Fountain and represented Carl, and Nicky Carrazza, who was a made member at the time, sat down and sat down for Robert, and everything was squashed. And poor Michael lost his life. Hey, Anthony, hope you're doing well. Do I know any blank gangsters like Bumpy or Frank Lucas? They were like ahead of my time. Well, Frank Lucas was around in the 70s, but I never met him. But yeah, I knew some black gangsters. I knew they used to hang out at the Hippo. And I met a couple of black gangsters in prison, in federal prison. My last prison bit, I met some out of Philadelphia and Baltimore. They were big heroin dealers, tough guys, killers. This is a good one. If John Gotti was still alive and out of the can, do you think he would take advantage of the internet and have his own podcast? Definitely not. I don't want to start a tit for tat with Joe Molina, but that's ridiculous what he's doing. It's a disgrace to what he's supposed to allegedly stands for. I mean, made members of the Mafia shouldn't have podcasts, especially bosses. The guy was the boss of a crime family, and he has a podcast. I guess because he's just broke, he's a degenerate gambler, and he needed money, and I'm sure he's making money with it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that he has one. Not like I could picture my own man or Tony Lee. None of them like would have him. And you know, I was thinking about his podcast. John would definitely never do it. And you know what I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for the Philly guys that are in federal prisons, like the made members of Philly, or the stand-up associates that are in federal prisons. Because I was in federal prison with a lot of guys from Philly, a lot of guys that knew Joey, that were with him and were against him. And believe me, I know what goes on in federal prisons, and they're uncomfortable, and they're being laughed at and talked about behind their back over what Joey's doing, because any real wise guy or real mob guy is not okay with what Joey Molina is doing. So John would definitely not do that. Do I know anything about Willie Boy Johnson? I knew Willie Boy since I was a kid. He was with my father originally, then he had a beef, and then my father released him to Charlie Wagons. And we all know the story. He was a cooperator for many years, and eventually he was killed. John had him killed. but he was a tough guy. He was a big money earner. He always treated me good. I have to say that. He always treated me good. I made money with the guy. He always, at the track, the racetrack, he always treated me good. He gave me good information. He was good to me. Anthony, you mentioned Freddie Hart. Was he the guy that clipped Jerry Papa? No, definitely not. It wasn't. It wasn't that Freddie Hart. This goes a completely different Freddie Hart. This is a good one. Did Tony Lee and John Gotti understand addiction? They didn't understand addiction, but they helped me get clean. I talk about it all the time. Tony Lee paid for my treatment. When I got out of treatment, John looked out for me. He got me a car. He gave me a couple of $1,000. Did they understand it? I don't know if they understood it, but they just were good to the people they cared about, and that was the bottom line. They were good to the people they cared about. Oh, let's see what else we got here. Did you ever run into Mickey Festo? A few times. Did I ever go to Bruno's stable? A lot of times. I went to Bruno's stable with Tony Lee many, many times. Tony Lee was very, very friendly with Bruno, and we used to go. Bruno was one of the guys with Paulie Vario. When they took over the family gas pipe, the Vicar Musa, they had Bruno killed, Fasciola killed. But I went to his stable many times. I never been to Belgium. Sorry, this guy asked me if I ever been to Belgium. I would love to go to Belgium. This is a good one. Did you know someone from the Hill named Anthony Cuccio? He killed someone I grew up with named Philip Greenspan. This happened in Las Vegas outside the Stardust. Did I know Cuccio? Of course I knew Cuccio. I knew him since I was a little kid. He came from East New York. I know him really well. I hung out with him. I partied with him. They were going to clip him. Nick, there was a contract out on him in New York. Matter of fact, he was going to get shot in the head, and the guy that was going to shoot him in the head had the gun, and the gun jammed, and he heard it click, and he ran out of the apartment, and that's when he ran away to Vegas, and he killed. And I think what happened was in Vegas, from what I understand, it he thought the guy was sent from New York to kill him, and he killed two people that were not sent to kill him, and he got life in prison. From what I understand, he died now. He's dead, but of course I knew Cuccio. I knew him well. Definitely. That's a blast from the past. Hold on, let's see what else we got. We got some new stuff coming in. Hold on. Get some new stuff. Here we go. Do I have any idea who killed Hoffa? Franzese says he knew who did it, has tapes about it. I don't know. I never heard Michael say that. I know where it came from. It came from, Tony, Tony's crew. I don't know who did it. That's out of my realm. Noah Johns, how things going? Cuz things are going good. Thank you. And then Christopher Todd, how you doing? I'm doing good, thank you. Dundee from Scotland, how you doing? Love you too. I got another one, Michael J. Respect from New Hampshire. Hello, New Hampshire, how you doing? Getting a lot of stuff from out of town. Christopher Todd, Anthony, do you know about what time Tony Lee was made and by whom? Tony Lee was one of the last batch of guys that Albert Anastasia straightened out. There's a little story behind Tony getting straightened out. When the books were getting ready to be closed again, Albert sent word down that whoever wants to propose anybody to do it now, and my father put Tony Lee's name in. Well, Tony Lee had a decision to make because his uncle Willie was a wise guy with the Genovese family. So Tony Lee could have actually been straightened out with the Genovese family or with Albert Anastasia, which was the Magano family at the time. And being that him and my old man were partners, he chose, Albert Anastasia And he was in the last batch of guys that Albert actually straightened out before he was assassinated. I think he got killed right after Tony Lee got straightened out. Santino, watching from the UK. Hello, what's going on? Welcome. Let's see what else we got here. In the HBO movie Gotti with Asante, did you like William for the guy that played? Yeah, I like the actor that played Sam. I think they did the best job out of everybody, all the movies that were made. I don't know. I never met Anthony. I can't even pronounce his last name. Dean, I can't pronounce that name. Did I ever eat at Bobby Rubino's? This is from Zacco. Did you ever eat at Bobby Rubino's in South Florida? Heard all the time. The original Bobby Rubino's in the 70s. It was the more famous rib place. It was known all over the country. Everybody that came to South Florida went there to eat. It was way before South Beach, way before everybody. Matter of fact, I actually was dating one of the waitresses in the original Rubino's. I used to come down and we used to shack up, her and I. We used to hook up. I met her in there. Yeah, so I was there many times. Many times. Let's see what we got here. Who did I think was the hottest mob wife from the VH1 show? I really didn't watch it. I mean, I knew one or two of them. My cousin Pauline actually was really good friends with Big Ange. They went to school together. They talked all the time when the show was on. My cousin Pauline was from Sheepshead Bay. They were very tight. Her and Big Ange, very tight. Vegas Pete, hello from Vegas. Hey Pete, how you doing? This one's from Steve. I'm 52 and I'm an alcoholic. Haven't had a drink in 30 days. I've had 2 years sober before. Love your show. You give me hope. Hey, baby, one day at a time. 30 days is just the beginning. Hang on. Don't forget, everybody out there that's listening, don't forget about my Patreon. Membership start at $1. If you like my content, I got some really good stuff on there. I just put up a really interesting story about me and John Gotti up there. Check it out. It happened in the very early 80s. I think you'll get a kick out of it. Anthony Robbins. Anthony, what did you know about Big Gus murder ordered by Frank DeChico in 1986? Joe Watts did the work. Other question is, when Tony Pep wanted Freddie Massaro and Ralph Davino taken from Fat Andy. So Big Gus was Joe Butch's uncle, I think. Joe Watts was in on that hit. So was Skinny Dom and Joe Butch, actually. I don't know what the beef was over, but I know he was very good friends with my old man and Tony Lee. Gus, Tony wasn't happy about him getting murdered, but yeah, that's pretty much on the money. The other one was, another question is, when Tony Pep wanted Freddie and Ralph taken from Ralph Davino was never with my father. He was with Nicky. That was Ralphie the Fly. He was one of Nicky Carrazza guys and Lenny DiMaria's guys. Freddie, my old man and Tony never released Freddie to Tony Pep. After my father died, Freddie went on record with Tony Pep. My father and Tony refused. Well, Tony was dead, I think, at the time. When Pep wanted Freddie transferred, Tony Lee was dead. And this is an incident that happened. And Nicky was on the panel of the family and asked me to go ask my father if he was willing to release Freddie. So I was in New York. I went to visit my old man, and my old man said, absolutely not. I'm not releasing nobody to anybody. So I went back. I was in Florida, and we were out to dinner. Tony Pep, me, Nicky, a few ladies. I think Lenny DiMaria was there. And I told them that my old man said no, and Pep got all upset. He got really angry. Yeah, that was it. And then he tried again, Tony Pep, to get Freddie taken from my old man in New York, and he went to Pete and Skinny Dom, and they got mad at him and told him, didn't Andy already tell you no? So that was the end of that situation. I What was filming on Soft White Underdog like? What was Mark like? Great experience, very professional. Mark, a really good guy, very professional, intelligent. The studio, it was in Santa Monica. It was just a really good experience. You know, the interview is out now. It came out yesterday. It has already well over 100,000 views, close to 700 comments, 99.9% great comments. A really good experience all around. I'm looking to work with Mark again, hopefully in the near future. Gotti Jr. did that podcast. Is that it? What do you think he does next? I have no idea. You know, rumor is he's going to have his own podcast. I don't know what he's looking to do, but, you know, more will be revealed, right? Florida attorney, did you ever eat at New York Prime in Boca Raton? It's Joey Molina's favorite restaurant. Yes, I have. I ate in New York Prime. It's many times. So, but I haven't run into Joey yet. So that's going to be a hell of a night when I do run into him. How did I like The Sopranos? I liked them. I mean, you know, I never saw them. I was in prison when they came out. When I got out of prison, a friend of mine actually from London, Chris, a friend of mine from London, England, Chris sent me the box set as a gift. And I binged watched them, and it was good. It was pretty realistic. I mean, you know, him seeing a psychiatrist, that would have never happened, but it was pretty realistic. I identified with a lot of it. You know, I didn't particularly care for the last episode. I was home for the last season. I really didn't particularly care for the last episode, but I thought they did a really good job with it.
And we have a question from Amber. Amber, go ahead.
Yes. So we know a lot. First, the interview was fantastic. The soft white underbelly interview.
Thank you. You know, I saw it yesterday for the first time myself. It was pretty good.
Yeah. It was well done. But reliably, I always have your Paul Castellano questions. We know a lot, obviously, about how unpopular he was as a boss, but I'm curious how he was thought of when he was a capo.
Was that Paul Castellano?
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I didn't really know much about him. You know, when I first came around in the late 60s, you know, Carl Gambino was the boss, and I really never heard much about Paul. You know, I just knew that he owned butcher shops. That's really all I heard. I never heard anything one way or the other. I just heard that, you know, they had Western Beef was his, and you know, he had a piece of Consolidated Trucking with his cousin Paul, but I never heard any stories about him, just things he was involved in, until he became the boss. Like everybody assumed when Carl started getting sick, I think everybody in the street assumed that Neil was going to be the next boss. So when Paul was nominated by Carl and Neil didn't speak up, I think everybody was not in shock, but they took it what? You know, they were hit with a punch, because nobody expected that. And a lot of people got upset, as we well know, over Neil. But I never heard stories one way or the other about Paul outside of businesses he owned, and, you know, that was it. And that he had a lot of money. I always heard he had a lot of money. I always heard they all had a lot of money. They were married to cousins. I always heard that they were married to cousins. Yeah.
So I think actually OC Shorts did a video about this, but I read this before I saw his video on it, and I wanted to ask about it. Going back to the 60s, there are a few FBI files that talk about how at least according to informants, that Carlo was using Paul as a go-between, more so as an underboss, more so than Neil, when Carl was, I want to say it was hospitalized for something heart related or having a heart issue. But if you hadn't heard that about him, it makes me wonder how true
I
it
don't
is.
believe that's true because when Neil went to prison in the 70s, Neil went to prison in the 70s he did a short amount of time. They had a panel to take care of the underboss position, and Paul wasn't on the panel. Charlie West was on the panel. Mike Talley was on the panel. So I don't know if.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm sure that Neil and Carl had to okay that panel to represent Neil, but Charlie West was on it, and I don't believe Paul was on it. So I don't know. That might just be gossip. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, Paul, as far as I know, Neil and Carlo Gambino had a really good relationship. I mean, according to what Tony Lee and my old man always told me.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine informants, if you're an informant, you want to give your handlers things you think that they'll want. So
a lot of hearsay stuff, everybody,
right, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got some more questions here, Pasquale.
All right, go ahead.
This is from Anthony Robbins. Did you know Michael Falco and Johnny Rogan from Florida? I may have. Did Louis Mayon rat everyone out at Party Girls Lounge? I mean, Louis Mayon was my brother. He was an informant. He put me in prison. Party Girls was at where Junior Abundando, the Dash's son, was murdered outside of Party Girls. I spent a lot of hours in Party Girls. It was on Biscayne Boulevard. I'm sure Louis gave information on everybody in Party Girls. It was a big hangout. It was, run by Junior. Like I said, a lot of blow going in and out of there. I'm sure Louis did. Chris Kane. The Chin seems to be the only mobster that nobody has a bad thing to say about. Is it fair to say he is the most respected recent mob? I don't know if he's not respected. I mean, he definitely, to do what he did, to make out he was insane, to go in and out of mental institutions, to take psychotic medication. I mean, I know a lot of old timers around Tony Lee and my old man didn't really particularly care for what he did and how he acted, but of course he was respected. He was a boss. But a lot of people behind his back were not happy with what he was doing. Hey, Anthony, did you ever have dealings with the Colombo family? Yeah, I had a lot of dealings with the Colombo family. I was good friends with a lot of them. Let me see what else I got. Hold on, I got one more question. Did I ever, this is from the Florida attorney, did you ever party at the Carlin Hotel in Miami? I have a lot of great memories. I partied, listen, in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, I partied everywhere in Miami, everywhere. So this is from CB. Do you remember Sapienza Cold Cuts in Ozone Park? Do I remember Sapienza Cold Cuts? Are you kidding me? The best heroes around. The two brothers, I was there all the time. My wife, Alice, lived right across the street, and Father and Son was on that block. And then the PM Pub was on that block. Of course, I remember Sapienza. They were the best. Okay, I think that's about it. We're going to wrap it up. Don't forget about my Patreon. Like I said, I got a brand new video on there that I just did yesterday about a little story that took place between me and John Gotti in the very, very, very early 80s when John first became a captain. Check it out. The membership started at $1. And if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe and hit the button and ring the bell. And don't forget to check out my store. I got some good merch on there. And everybody have a nice, safe day.